Good Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, another tragic milestone. The United States officially passing 700,000 coronavirus deaths. The same weekend, the CDC released new guidelines for upcoming holiday travel to prevent another surge in cases. And what the White House is doing to get as many people vaccinated before the colder months. Plus, news this morning that another vaccine manufacturer will seek approval for a booster dose. Just getting started, sparring Democrats are rolling up their sleeves and working to find unity after missing multiple deadlines to pass the president's economic agenda. Speaker Pelosi now setting a deadline for a deal by the end of the month. What moderates and progressives are demanding out of those massive bills that could define President Biden's legacy. Back in session, the Supreme Court returns to hear cases in person for the first time in more than a year. And there are some major cases on the docket. Abortion rights, the strength of the Second Amendment, and school voucher programs are all being considered. A look ahead at the cases that could shape the nation's future. New news. A Latina high school student is making community engagement more accessible and bilingual. How a high school student in Montana created the first Spanish language newspaper in the state, and how she's working to keep her family and friends informed. And we are happy to have you with us on this Monday morning that here in the New York area feels very Monday. Gloomy, kind of muggy.
It's a little rainy,
yeah,
but at least it's not, 95 degrees.
Yeah, that's
humid,
true. It's cooling down a little bit, yeah. All right, we begin, though, with the push to save more lives in the coronavirus pandemic as the U.S. hits a tragic milestone.
More than 700,000 Americans have now died from COVID-19. The U.S. surpassed that total late Friday, with nearly 6,000 more people dying of the virus over the weekend. That means as of this morning, nearly 706,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. That's more than the population of the entire city of Boston. For health experts, the key to preventing more deaths lies with the vaccine. The White House says more than 1.2 million doses were handed out yesterday. That's the highest increase in a month. And now the New York Times reports that Johnson & Johnson plans to apply for emergency use authorization for its booster shot this week. NBC News health and medical reporter Erica Edwards is following the top pandemic headlines for us this morning. So, Erica, let's start there with J&J. What do we know about the booster shots for Johnson & Johnson and its efficacy?
Hey, good morning, Joe. So the CDC recently compared all three vaccines that we have, finding that the Johnson & Johnson shot is 71% effective in keeping people out of the hospital. Now, that's a significant benefit, right? But the Pfizer vaccine was found to be 88% effective. Moderna is 93% effective. Johnson & Johnson, however, also released data recently finding that a second dose boosted the effectiveness against symptoms. Administration is already expected to meet next Friday, October 15th, to discuss emergency use authorization for a booster shot of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. Joe?
So, Erica, it is October. The weather's getting colder, as many may have noticed. A lot of us are, yes, thinking about the holidays. That includes the CDC. They release recommendations on how to have safe holiday parties, whether you're wearing an ugly sweater or not. So what are they saying about that?
So the new CDC guidelines really seem to stress good airflow if you're going to be gathering indoors. They say open up all of the windows, put a fan in one of those windows to keep fresh air circulating. Other tips are pretty standard. Get vaccinated if you're traveling. Stay masked indoors if you're in an area with high levels of community transmission, or, of course, celebrate online virtually, which, of course, we did a lot last. Sweaters, just like you suggested. It's going to be pretty chilly with all those windows open. Of course, that last tip was from me, not the CDC. Joe?
All right. And a lot of parents do hope younger kids get vaccinated by the holidays. If you're in California, children will soon have to get vaccinated to go to school. It's the first such mandate like that in the country. So what do parents need to know about this requirement?
Yeah, so California Governor Gavin Newsom made this announcement last Friday, saying that kids in both public and private schools will need to be vaccinated against COVID-19 to attend class. Now, while that's the first in the country for COVID-19, it's not the first vaccine mandate for school children. Kids already have to get the chickenpox shots, measles, mumps, rubella vaccines to attend school. Now, Gavin Newsom's plan is not going to be immediate. First of all, there's no vaccine for kids under age 12. The vaccine for kids between the ages of 12 and 15 is used under emergency use authorization only. Newsom said that his plan will only go into effect pending FDA full approval. Here's what he had to say.
We intend to do that once the FDA has fully approved the vaccine, which will give us time to work with districts, give us time to work with parents and educators to build more trust and confidence and build out a logistics so that we can deliver on what we are promoting here today.
Now, given that time frame, the requirement could go into effect for some kids January 1st. Joe.
All right, Erica, with the latest COVID headlines, thank you so much.
Now, intensive care units at several hospitals have remained at full capacity for over a year. Staffing shortages and limited treatment options have left hospitals struggling to care for some of their sickest patients. The result, fatigued employees and near-death experiences. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us now from outside Oakland Hospital in Marshall, Michigan with more. Shaq, good morning. So I know this hospital that you're at has been at full capacity since October 2020. I mean, really think about that, full capacity since then. But the reason why isn't always just COVID surges or physical beds. What are doctors saying is the reason, and what kind of impact is that having?
Yes, Savannah, a lot of factors go into this. And let's just underscore again what you just said. This hospital at or above capacity for more than a year at this point. We look back and there was actually an article when they first reached capacity, and that was exactly a year ago. And when you talk to doctors about exactly why they're dealing with this, there's many factors that go into place here. One is the idea that COVID patients require that intensive care for longer periods of time than most patients who go into the ICU. So you have patients here for days and weeks at a time. You combine that with the staffing shortages that you're seeing all across the country. It really leads to a situation where this is an ICU that has about 16 beds. It's a small hospital, a small ICU ward. It's not just the fact that they need more beds, but they need more staff that can help supply and provide that patient care as you have patients here for that extended period of time, Savannah.
So, Shaq, I think the combination of the fact that they need more staff, so obviously that means so much is falling on the staff that is there. And then, of course, just coupled with what it is that they're dealing with every day, I can't imagine that morale is very good. I mean, how are the nurses there doing? How is this issue affecting them?
Yeah, you know, doctors tell the story of how, because this is COVID, when they go into one ICU room, they're putting on new scrubs, they're putting on new PPE and then leaving the room and taking it out. It's much more intense and much more of a grind than any other patient that they normally have to deal with in an ICU. I want you to listen to what the doctor here told me just yesterday in the Zoom interview about the morale and what they're experiencing with this surge and running at that full capacity for more than a year.
It feels like deja vu. It feels like Groundhog Day. Like every day it's like a living the same day over and over. It's like, when is this going to change? You know, again, you know, people, I think the morale is good. I mean, in the sense that, look, this is our job. We understand that we're doing a very, you know, we're in critical care because we like to take care of sick people, but we're tired. I mean, we are tired. We are fatigued. That's the word I would say. I don't think that morale is down in the pits, but we're tired.
He's the critical care physician here. You know, he also told one story of how the situation, because staff are being so overburdened, it's a situation where when one is out, when one gets sick or one goes on vacation, you have fewer people willing to fill in that gap because everyone is working at that full capacity. It's just the effects of when you have an ICU like this running at that high level for so long. It has a widespread effect on not only the patients, but also the staff, Savannah.
Absolutely. And I know that there are ripple effects from this, Shaq, that this one packed ICU affects surrounding hospitals and vice versa. I know, in fact, one patient almost died this weekend right there at Oakland Hospital where you are. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the impact of the entire system and the strain this is having on the entire system. When a small hospital like this has a patient that they need to provide care for that is only available at a larger hospital, it leads to some risky situations. Listen to what the doctor told me yesterday.
I called 8 hospitals to get that patient transferred, and I couldn't find anybody to accept the patient. So this is the stress that it puts on it. I have a patient that I have a treatment that I can offer them at another hospital. I can't get them there. And so I'm going to have to call the wife and say, look, there's a very high likelihood your husband will die of kidney failure because I can't transfer him. I mean, it's incredibly stressful. Thankfully, a bed opened up in one of our local hospitals. We were able to transfer him. But that's a situation that I was scrambling yesterday morning. What do I do here with this patient that I need to treat? But there's nothing I can do.
Savannah, that story really just underscores the idea that even if you don't have patients dying from COVID, because these hospitals are being so strained, the ripple effect that has where patients are dying of things that they normally wouldn't be dying from, or at least they're put at risk of dying from those things when there's treatments available, but not the space or staff to take care of these people. Right. Savannah?
Just heartbreaking. Tough to hear. Shaquille Brewster, thank you so much.
In Washington, another busy week ahead as Democrats in Congress work to find agreement on the president's economic agenda.
Yeah, that's right. The goal, uniting the divided Democratic caucus in order to pass the president's multi-trillion-dollar social safety net bill, also known as that human infrastructure bill, and also pass the bipartisan infrastructure deal. All sides of the Democratic Party are digging in their heels, and all eyes have been on Senators Manchin and Sinema holding strong. Now, Speaker Pelosi has set a new deadline of October 31st to pass both bills.
Here with a look at what's ahead this week, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. So, Ali, we saw how things collapsed last week over disagreements with these two bills, largely over the price tag of the larger bill. What needs to happen to get both these bills over the finish line and to get them to the president's desk to be signed into law?
Joe, it looks like the answer is more negotiating. When we finally left the Hill after a very long week on Friday, one of the last conversations I had was with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who's leading the Progressive Caucus through these negotiations. And what I heard from her after a meeting that she had with her entire caucus was that their task from the president was to make sure that they knew what policy priorities they needed in this bill. Their goal, as it has been in recent days, is to shift the conversation away from this conversation about a price tag and instead to a conversation about the policy priorities. We saw that spill into the Sunday shows as we saw progressives really flood the zone while moderates stayed mum over the weekend. Take a listen to some of those conversations that we heard.
I do believe that both bills are going to pass, and I think that both bills, a big reason both bills are going to pass is because the American people supported an enormous caucus of 95 House progressives to defend these kinds of investments.
This is a negotiation. We don't all see this exactly the same way. And so it isn't enough to say, oh, we'll find an agreement. We need to understand what exactly that agreement is going to be. Negotiations are hard. Hard stuff is hard to do. And we have to remember that and just kind of keep on pushing forward and finding that path forward that all 50 of us in the Senate can agree on.
So you're hearing notes of optimism there. That's because most Democrats agree they want to march in lockstep forward on this agenda. At the same time, what you didn't hear was much from the moderate perspective, specifically the two moderates in the Senate who have been at the center of this entire thing, Senators Manchin and Sinema. Sinema has been home in Arizona. We know that she's been hearing from activists, certainly hearing from her constituents as well as in the national conversation. At the same time, we know their price tag, but we don't know much else about this. So we're in the waiting game on that.
So, Ali, as you've just laid out, this has really been a fight within the Democratic Party. But then Republicans in the House and Senate have kind of been hands-off in this process. And now, though, they say Democrats aren't including them in these latest negotiations. First, let's listen, and then we'll talk on the other side.
What we're seeing is like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone. I thought Joe Biden went to the Hill on Friday to try to get that bipartisan infrastructure bill passed, and instead he's surrendered to the radical wing of his party. And now you have this big government socialism, reckless spending bill being basically used to hold hostage the things that the American people want, are roads and bridges, highways, all of those things.
So, Ali, where is the GOP in this process?
Look, as I've been talking to Republican sources on the Hill, they've been sort of happy over the course of the last week to sit back. They enjoyed the idea that Democrats were in disarray. They can probably still keep pushing that narrative. The point where that becomes untenable is when and if Democrats actually end up getting this done. Democrats continue to remind that this is sort of a once-in-career opportunity for many of these lawmakers to do a lot of big structural change throughout different parts of the economy, not just on climate change, but also in things like childcare and elder care. Republicans, though, for now, while this process still seems messy, are going to continue to try to make hay of it. And frankly, as I was passing Republicans on the halls of Congress the other day, they were all just happy to sit back, hands off, and let the process play out.
And quickly, Allie, on this last one, the big question now, the debt limit needs to be raised by mid-month. Where do things stand with that?
There have been so many deadlines floating around on the Hill, Joe, but this is the one that we've been barreling towards that has the most consequences. October 18th or October 19th, that's when the Treasury Department estimates that the U.S. line of credit will run out. That's the deadline that we're operating under right now. Democrats in the Senate have said that they are fine going it alone. Republicans want that. The question is, Republicans want them to go it alone in a very specific way. They want Democrats to raise the debt ceiling through reconciliation. That's something that Democratic leadership has said is a non-starter. They've tried to do this a few other ways through simple majorities. Republicans have continued to block them. That sort of leaves us in the planning mode here as we start Monday on the Hill.
All right, Allie Vitale, busy week ahead. Thanks, Allie.
Thank you. And now Meet the Press covered a range of topics yesterday, from what we were just talking about, the status of congressional negotiations, to the backlash against Facebook. Here's a look at the highlights and more with moderator Chuck Todd.
Well, good morning, Savannah and Joe. On this week's Meet the Press, President Biden gave progressives a win by delaying a vote on the big infrastructure package. I spoke with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and White House senior advisor Cedric Richmond. Plus, the revelations from Facebook and that whistleblower. I sat down with two reporters, Jeff Horowitz and Kara Swisher, to tease apart that latest reporting as well. Here are some of the most important answers from Meet the Press Compressed.
There's an enormous amount of trust in the Democratic Party. But more importantly, there's a lot of focus on the American families. And look, people will be disappointed. People will not get everything they want. That is the art of legislating. But the goal here is to get both bills. And we're going to fight until we get both bills. And that's the statement from the president. Human infrastructure is important, and physical infrastructure is important. So we're going to do both.
There are a lot of people who are negotiating with Senator Sinema. She has been in the White House, as I understand it, on numerous occasions. I think the people of Arizona are beginning to stand up and show some impatience there and saying, you know, Senator, join the team here. Let's get something done on reconciliation. So I think, look, you know, sometimes, Chuck, in all due respect, the media thinks this is the Red Sox playing the Yankees. It is not. This is a long and complicated process which is dealing with the most consequential piece of legislation probably since the New Deal and the Great Depression. It's a big deal, and it's not going to happen overnight. And the president is absolutely right. It doesn't matter whether it's next week or 3 weeks from now. What matters is that we finally address the problems facing working families. That's what matters.
Well, I was just going to say, deadlines are all artificial in your mind right now?
Of course they are. What matters is that we do it, and we do it well. And when we do both of these pieces of legislation, I think the American people are going to say, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Democrats in the Congress. And by the way, where the hell were the Republicans in not having the guts to stand up to powerful special interests?
This is coming from inside of Facebook. How under siege are they as a company right now?
So we have heard that they actually have taken pretty much all of their researchers and basically blame them for this. It's a very weird mentality over there. They have been kind of throwing those people under the bus, the people that they asked to understand the platform's role in the world. And that's a very kind of aggressive thing for them.
This is a company whose employees didn't really leak for a long, long time. But you're seeing it all over tech. It's not just here. Is people are like, just a second, what we're doing is damaging. It's not, you know, I did an interview with Mark Benioff a couple of years ago. He called it cigarettes. It's not precisely cigarettes, is it? It's like, it's also gambling. It might be opiates. It might be other things. But the people inside those companies are recognizing that this company doesn't anticipate consequences and then tries to clean it up later, and then not very well.
Thanks to Chuck Todd for that Meet the Press wrap. Later yesterday, that Facebook whistleblower was revealed on 60 Minutes as former employee Frances Haugen. Her interview is sparking a fresh round of scrutiny for the tech giant. Haugen worked as a product manager on Facebook's civic misinformation team. She claims the social media giant's priorities are causing severe harm to the public. In the interview, she explained why she felt the need to speak out against Facebook.
The thing I saw at Facebook over and over again was there were conflicts of interest between what was good for the public and what was good for Facebook. And Facebook over and over again chose to optimize for its own interests, like making more money. When we live in an information environment that is full of angry, hateful, polarizing content, it erodes our civic trust, it erodes our faith in each other, it erodes our ability to want to care for each other. The version of Facebook that exists today is tearing our societies apart and causing ethnic violence around the world.
Facebook issued a response to the 60 Minutes report saying, in part, every day our teams have to balance protecting the right of billions of people to express themselves openly with the need to keep our platform a safe and positive place. We continue to make significant improvements to tackle the spread of misinformation and harmful content. To suggest we encourage bad content and do nothing is just not true. Now, Frances Haugen is not done speaking out. She's scheduled to testify in front of a Senate subcommittee tomorrow.
Now to the urgent effort to contain a massive oil spill off the coast of California. Officials say a pipeline failure caused oil to pour into the Pacific, forcing beach closures and endangering some of the region's precious wildlife. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has the latest.
Joe and Savannah, this is the oily goop animals are up against. In this pond here, several fish trapped beneath the oil-coated surface. And keep in mind, this is a tiny fraction of the miles of beach impacted. A race against time. Authorities frantically working to slow the spread of a major oil spill. A pipeline off the coast of Orange County in Southern California dumping 126,000 gallons of oil into the Pacific, spanning 13 square miles.
We are in the midst of a potential ecological disaster here.
The leak began Saturday. The pipeline company says the line has been shut down, but they do not know what caused it to fail.
We currently have divers on location at the potential source site. We are investigating the source and potential cause.
A major concern, wildlife. Toxic globs washing ashore and infiltrating treasured wetlands.
We've already received reports of many animals being covered in oil.
Health officials warning it could be harmful to humans, too. The goopy mess, a stain to Southern California's typically pristine beaches. But what you can't see, the awful smell. It will give you a headache in minutes. The area seeing an influx of visitors because of the iconic Pacific Air Show, which was canceled. Many now passing time at area beaches, despite calls to avoid the sand and the sea. People are in the water. Does that concern you?
It does concern me. The toxic fumes are present in the air, and it might be impactful to your health.
An ecological nightmare growing with each wave. The pipeline is beneath 80 to 100 feet of water, making it difficult for divers to pinpoint the source. Amplify Energy says they inspected the pipeline just last week. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Emily Aketa, thank you for bringing us that report.
Let's get a check on your morning news now weather.
Which means it's time for Bill Cairns to join us. Hey, Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. It kind of ended on a wet note. If you're watching, especially that football game last night in Foxborough with Brady returning, it was raining pretty good, and it continues this morning. It's probably the worst weather we have in the country is in areas of New England. You can see all the rain still moving through, especially areas from Providence to Boston. And then there's another batch in central Pennsylvania, and there's even more rain back in Michigan and central Michigan. And then Atlanta southwards has some scattered storms. So here's how it's going to play out the rest of today. The steady rains will continue from Albany through Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, Vermont, too, also down through Boston. So definitely some slow travel in those areas. We will have hit and miss showers and storms tomorrow around Atlanta. So if you have any travel plans through Atlanta or the airport, you could have some significant delays to deal with. And the heaviest rains, if we're going to get localized flooding, would be in southern portions of Alabama. That's where we could see some of the strongest storms. Again, this is tomorrow afternoon. This is not for today. Today's heaviest rain is up in areas of New England. So the forecast say, besides the rainy weather I just talked talked about, we really have to look at how warm it still is. I mean, we're now in October, and we're still in the 80s from Boise to Billings, all through the Central Plains. Southern Texas is still in the 90s, and the warm weather continues into Tuesday. D.C. at 80 degrees, Billings at 85 degrees. I mean, this October is starting very, very warm. You guys forget, I mean, you can notice the sun is setting earlier each and every day, but we're supposed to be getting much cooler than what we are. It'll be interesting. This could go down as a very, very warm October, maybe even challenging records.
Wow. All right. I feel like we've had so much of that this year. All right, Bill Cairns, thank you so much. See you in an hour.
Yes.
Women's rights are under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back.
Hundreds of rallies in support of abortion rights were held over the weekend, with the future of those rights now in doubt. For protesters, the issue grew more urgent after Texas passed a restrictive new abortion ban. Other states could soon follow suit. The nation's highest court will hear a case from Mississippi later this year, with many wondering what that could mean for Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, the U.S. Supreme Court will begin its new fall term today. And as NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams explains, abortion rights is not the only controversial topic the court will take up.
It's likely to be the most important term for abortion rights in at least 3 decades. The court will take up a Mississippi law that would ban virtually all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy.
After the point where the unborn child can feel pain, we ought to provide them an extra level of protection from the abortion.
But the Supreme Court has consistently ruled, beginning with Roe v. Wade, that states cannot ban abortion before around 24 weeks. Mississippi urges the court to take a bold step and overturn Roe.
If Roe is reversed, probably almost half the states in the United States would strictly limit abortion and perhaps ban it altogether.
And the new Texas law shutting down abortions after just 6 weeks is bound to be back too. The Supreme Court allowed it to take effect a month ago. The justices will decide whether local laws that require showing a special need to get a permit to carry a concealed weapon violate the constitutional right to keep and bear arms.
It's contrary to the Second Amendment. I mean, does your right to self-protection stop when you leave your home?
A case from Maine invites the court to rule on another contentious issue. Does using public money to send children to schools offering religious education violate the separation of church and state? And the court might take up the affirmative action controversy over considering an applicant's race as a factor in college admissions.
I think we're going to look back at this as the year in which the conservatives really did fully take over the Supreme Court and American constitutional law, where they got what they were really looking for on the big hot-button issues that affect all of Americans' lives.
And the end of the term will likely bring more speculation about whether Justice Stephen Breyer, who turns 84 in August, intends to retire, while the Democrats hold both the White House and the Senate. Savannah, Joe?
All right, Pete Williams, thank you so much.
The coming clash over congressional redistricting is already making headlines in Tennessee. 2020 census data shows that the state's 5th district, which includes Nashville, has grown over the last decade. But Democrats are now concerned the reliably blue district could be split up by GOP lawmakers who will create the state's new congressional map. For more on that, we're joined by NBC News senior reporter Jane Tim. Jane, good morning to you. So first, let's sort of give everyone a baseline here. Help us understand the importance of this 5th congressional district. I lived there many, many years ago, but what areas does it include and how has it changed in recent years?
So, Joe, the 5th congressional district, as I'm sure you remember, is Nashville and some of the suburbs to the west and some of the little bit of rural areas of Cheatham County, Dixon County. And it's important because it's the bluest, it's very, very blue part of this state. Now, Tennessee is very red, and there are 2 blue dots, Memphis, Nashville. And this district is part of the most booming part of Tennessee. Middle Tennessee has grown a lot in the last 10 years, Nashville particularly, and also the suburbs around it. Now, the district's important because, of course, it sends Democrats to Congress. This is a city with a unified interest, but Democrats are very worried that this seat will get split up as these district lines are redrawn. Now, every congressional district in the country has the same number of people. That means that growing urban areas, the geographic boundaries get smaller. Large rural areas, which lost a lot of people in the last 10 years, those are going to get bigger geographically to include the same number of people as these smaller congressional districts and cities.
So the bottom line is the district is now too big and must be changed. This does make it a prime target for partisan gerrymandering, which of course happens everywhere, all over the country. But what do we know about the redistricting plans currently being considered? Who would be affected by them?
So Republicans tell me that the plans haven't been drawn, but essentially there are rumors running wild in Nashville that they're going to split the city up into 4 different districts so that the surrounding districts stay red, and that a new district essentially would be drawn in a different area with a 5th congressional district number that would also be a red seat. So Rep. Jim Cooper, who is the incumbent, basically told me there is just too much smoke for there not to be fire. This is clearly a plan. One of his challengers doesn't even live in the district. Now, in Tennessee law, you don't have to live in the district you want to represent, but certainly help in politics. And he's absolutely very convinced that his seat will be redrawn, and he would essentially lose his job.
So, Jane, let's talk about what comes next. What's the process for approving a new congressional map there in Tennessee? Do state Democrats have any recourse if that district is indeed split up in a more partisan way?
Yeah, Republicans have a really strong supermajority in Tennessee, so there really isn't anything Democratic lawmakers can do. They tell me that they are intending to fight a plan like this. There is certainly a lobbying campaign going on, being led by Rep. Cooper, urging people to keep the city together. There's a couple of points of view here where Republicans also worry that if they do this, it might be a risky move, that 10 years from now, these district lines could look different and they might lose more seats. One Republican member of Congress who would be affected by adding a lot of Democratic blue voters to his seat said he thinks this is greedy and unsafe politically.
All right, Jane, Tim, thanks so much for breaking that down for us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
And let's take a look at what's making news around the world this morning.
Matt Podner is with us today. Hi, Matt. Good morning.
Savannah, good morning. Well, a lot going on over the weekend. So let's start with the very biggest one. It's a massive story, truly international. That is the largest ever leak of information on offshore deals and assets. And these are offshore things belonging to more than 100 billionaires, 30 world leaders, and 300 public officials. And this was all released yesterday. And this leak is being called the Pandora Papers. You can kind of think of it like a follow-up to the Panama Papers a few years ago. And it features a large number of Russian nationals. Actually, the International Committee of Investigative Journalists, which is one of the lead organizations on this project, said that Russians are disproportionately represented. So I think I have a lot of reading to do. Moving on now to Afghanistan, where the capital of Kabul faces a serious blackout as winter approaches, since the new Taliban regime has not paid electricity suppliers in Central Asia, nor have they even begun to resume collecting money from energy consumers. We're hearing that from former Afghan energy officials, and they are warning that if this is not addressed, it could spark a serious runoff effect that sees power and communications cut to much of the country. And finally, Japan has a new prime minister, Fumio Kishida, following a parliamentary vote earlier today. Now, he almost immediately announced plans to dissolve parliament next week and call for snap elections on October 31st. This move is seen as kind of a bid to take advantage of this honeymoon period after being elected and bolster his position in parliament. That's the wrap.
All right. Thank you, Matt. We'll let you get back to reading those Pandora Papers. The 47th season of Saturday Night Live premiered over the weekend with Owen Wilson hosting for his first time. It featured a touching tribute by Weekend Update co-anchors Colin Jost and Michael Che as they honored former SNL cast member Norm Macdonald by looking back at some of his most memorable moments on the Update anchor desk. Macdonald recently passed away after a long battle with cancer. The premiere episode also featured newcomer James Austin Johnson as President Biden in an impression that did get good reviews. Before joining SNL, Johnson was well known for impersonating Biden's predecessor, former President Trump. Something tells me at some point we're all going to see that impression on the show somewhere, sometime, some way.
Probably soonish.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I was kind of surprised to hear that Owen Wilson had never hosted before, just because he's been such a big celebrity for so long.
His brothers were there with him, too.
Yeah,
so
very cool. All right, great. Lots to watch for this season. Thank you, Joe. Now, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we want to help make sure you know what to look for and how to lower your risk for the disease. Now, 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer in their lifetime. Last year, over 42,000 people died from the disease. But in the U.S., there are over 3.5 million survivors, and that's a number that doctors say can grow as more people stay ahead of the illness. Dr. Jennifer Litton is here to help us do just that. She's a professor of breast medical oncology and the vice president of clinical research at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. Doctor, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Such an important topic this month, but also all year round. So thank you for helping us shine a light on it right now. So let's start with some of the signs and symptoms of breast cancer. How can someone tell if maybe it's time to go to the doctor? What should they look out for and actually think, hey, I should talk to somebody about this and not just ignore it?
Sure. So certainly, should someone see a new lump in their breast, new redness, thickening, nipple discharge, really anything that's new and is there for 2 weeks and not going away, you need to bring up to your doctor.
Great advice there. Now, there are several ways to be preventative about breast cancer, I know. So walk us through how someone can spot it early. You just mentioned some of those physical signs. Tell us if there's anything else, and also what preventative measures can be taken.
Sure. So there's a lot of healthy measures that we can do for not only breast cancer reduction, but cancer reduction in general. And they're the things we know. It's to eat a healthy diet. It's to maintain a healthy weight, no smoking, and of course, limiting alcohol consumption. We even show that any alcohol consumption can increase the risk. So limiting to at least 1 drink or less is very important. There's also some discussion with hormone replacement therapy, so make sure you have a discussion about your risk with your caregiver. But really, everyone should know their family history. Take that time to see if there's patterns in your family that you need to bring up with your healthcare provider.
Absolutely. And now let's talk through some of what we're seeing right there, which is these mammogram photos. Of course, COVID presented some challenges for women looking to get any real type of preventative care, no matter what it's for, but especially for mammograms. So doctors are still urging women, though, to get examined. So tell us, who should be getting a mammogram, how often, at what age? Walk us through kind of the good things to keep in mind here.
Absolutely. So it is, even in the middle of this COVID pandemic, it is important to be getting your regular cancer screenings because finding it earlier is much easier to treat. So there are many different guidelines out there. What we do at MD Anderson is age 40 and older, starting with mammograms yearly. There are some, if you're lower risk, to have every other year options. MRIs can be very helpful in patients who have a very high risk of developing breast cancer, such as patients with a known gene mutation, such as the BRCA1 or 2 genes. Now, ultrasounds can also be very important. It helps us localize biopsy, but really should not be used as a screening by itself. It should be used in addition to the mammogram or an MRI if you're high risk.
All right, Dr. Jennifer Litton with some incredible reminders, some good advice there for us, and it's a conversation, again, we should be having all the time. So hopefully we will see you before next October. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
A new study says more kids are gaining weight during the pandemic, and that has health officials sounding the alarm. NBC News Now correspondent Maura Barrett shows us what doctors have been seeing over the past year and a half and why they're so worried.
There was never a shortage of patients, but now there are more patients than ever.
A familiar phrase we've heard from doctors during the COVID-19 pandemic, but Dr. Evan Nadler here is referring to children struggling with obesity.
You know, obesity has always been a problem, and it's always needed attention, and it's always needed a better sort of explanation and more solutions, especially for children, because they're so severely affected, and the numbers are going in the wrong direction. And COVID has just made that worse.
16 states have a high prevalence of obesity, meaning that 35% or more of their residents are obese. This number has almost doubled in the last 3 years. But the state with the highest self-reported prevalence of obesity is Mississippi at 39.7%. For kids, there's a direct connection to the pandemic, the CDC found, as children were gaining weight twice as fast as usual. The study highlighted the fact that children spent time away from structured school settings, which meant they might have seen more stress, irregular meal times, less access to nutritious foods, more screen time, and less opportunity for physical activity. But pandemic weight gain was common, and the attention to the connection between weight and COVID even drove awareness internationally to push a healthier agenda.
The reason I had such a nasty experience with the disease is that although I was superficially in the pink of health when I caught it. I had a very common underlying condition. My friends, I was too fat. And I've since lost 26 pounds, and you can imagine that in bags of sugar. And I'm going to continue that diet because you've got to search for the hero inside yourself in the hope that that individual is considerably slimmer.
But Dr. Nadler points out obesity can be more than just eating habits and physical activity.
So obesity itself is an inflammatory disease. Obesity is a very misunderstood disease. It affects every organ system in your body, including your immune system. If COVID's attacking the lungs, their obesity has already been attacking the lungs. They're probably multiply each other's effect.
He's frustrated with the continued stigma, saying patient blaming and fat shaming needs to stop, but is hopeful the added attention to the topic of obesity because of the COVID pandemic will help.
I mean, it's a pandemic in and of itself. It's actually endemic throughout the world now. And yet we still don't understand, the root cause. And what other disease that affects this vast number of people would we ever allow to go unsolved and not commit huge amount of money and resources to, except for one where the stigma keeps us from doing it.
That was Maura Barrett reporting. Scientists say the child obesity numbers could be higher since the study only included children who got care before and during the pandemic. Many children were not taken in for their regular checkups because of COVID. This week, we're taking a closer look at the Great Divide, the racial wealth gap in America. And our focus this morning is the competitive housing market. Some prospective buyers are having a difficult time getting approved for a home.
And as NBC News Now anchor Aaron Gilchrist explains, government loans designed to help first-time homebuyers actually are making it more difficult.
Walking down the street in her historically black neighborhood these days, Bessie Edwards notices a difference.
This is a newly renovated.
Is it for sale or?
No, it's gone already.
She sold real estate in Brooklyn for 20 years as the community gentrified.
Buyers are not from the Brooklyn community.
So you're seeing a lot of white folks come in and buy homes from black people?
Yes. Yeah. And that's happening a lot.
She believes one reason is that many people are trying to purchase a home using a Fair Housing Administration or FHA loan designed to help first-time home buyers.
The down payment is less. The credit score requirement is less. They allow you to have high debt.
Instead, these loans are making it harder for some first-time buyers.
It's a bit disheartening.
Kirkland Lynch thought he'd have no trouble buying a house in Brooklyn.
I mean, stellar credit, money for down payment, pre-approved mortgage from the bank.
But after months of bidding, none of his offers had been accepted, and he thinks he knows why.
Some would see the FHA loan and simply it seemed like they wouldn't get back to me. Others would be overly intrusive of my financial situation. I do think they didn't want to do business with the type of loan.
The gap in home ownership between black and white Americans has widened to 30%. And with the average black family having far less generational wealth, those FHA loans are meant to help shrink that gap. There is a great divide in how people are able to buy new homes. Data from a realty association shows that 53% of black home buyers used FHA or VA loans, while only 23% of white home buyers did. It is legal for sellers to factor in the type of loan a buyer is using, and FHA loans can come with too many strings.
There are federal guidelines that the property has to meet certain standards. They are required to meet the appraised price.
Despite the roadblocks, Lynch says he plans to keep up the search.
It's about faith, really, not giving up and just really having faith that something will come through in the long run.
Aaron Gilchrist, NBC News, New York.
Time now for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
And Bertha Coombs is with us on this Monday. Hey, Bertha, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Good to see you. Tesla delivered a record number of cars in the third quarter, beating Wall Street estimates. Tesla has managed to weather the global semiconductor chip shortage better than a lot of its rivals, with its overall deliveries jumping 20%. That's a sixth straight quarterly gain. Meantime, a lot of their rivals have had to actually stop production because they don't have chips. Analysts say rising exports to Europe from Tesla's factory in China and the launch of the cheaper Model Y has helped boost production. Meantime, Amazon is rolling out some early Black Friday deals today. That's right. The first Monday in October is their first Black Friday sale. They're available online on the mobile app or by asking Alexa, what are my deals? The deals are across all of their categories, including fashion, home, toys, and electronics, and they'll add new deals each day. Target is jumping on the bandwagon early as well, bringing back its deal days next week to help you get a jump on the holiday season, which could be a little bit tough this year because of all of those supply chain problems. Meantime, moviegoing during the pandemic starting to look a little bit like normal. Sony's Venom: Let There Be Carnage blowing away expectations to top the box office with $90 million this weekend, according to ComScore. That's the best opening since the pandemic. The result, along with strong international sales for James Bond film No Time to Die, add up to the best news for theaters in more than 18 months. I gotta say, though, I'm still kind of lazy. Even before the pandemic, I like to stream in my jammies with some rosé and maybe a little cheese.
Ooh, rosé.
I'm all about the charcuterie. Yeah, I mean, you know.
You got to go to one of those theaters where you can get the rosé and the charcuterie in your seat. Yeah. I haven't been back, but I'm excited.
$30 a ticket.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah,
the rosé's
plus a
probably
lot more for the
$30 too.
rosé.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Bertha.
Thanks. And welcome back. A high school student in Montana has taken on a big role at her school, starting the state's first Spanish-language newspaper.
Samantha Suazo says that she wanted to give Latinos in the state a voice while also fighting misinformation, which can spread quickly online. NBC News Digital reporter Maya Eaglin has more.
I was originally born in Honduras in a small village called La Laguna Esquias, Comayagua. I came to the United States at the age of 12 with my mom and my dad. Many people think of like an immigration journey kind of like a tragedy in a way because of all the things that you have to go through, but I don't like to think about it that way. It was my dad who brought me to the border where my mom was waiting for me, and we did go through some hard stuff. I think that at the end of the day, if it wasn't because of that, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Samantha Suazo's a high school student in Big Sky, Montana. But on top of balancing her schoolwork and extracurriculars, she started an online newspaper for the Spanish-speaking community in her area.
There's a lack of information in my community, and Noticias Montaña strives to attack that issue.
Last summer, after an internship at a local Montana paper where she wrote stories about the Latino community, Samantha came up with an idea.
After I finished my internship, I thought that there's no way that I was just going to stop, and that's how Noticias Montaña was born, due to that need of information. Now we've been reporting for more than a year and a half.
What was the amount of Spanish news before Noticias Montaña?
There's no Spanish speaking sources in the state before Noticias Montaña.
What about COVID information in the Latin community? Was that getting around?
No, honestly not. I saw that people were like getting their information from places such as YouTube, Facebook, something that they heard from a friend. It was nothing official. That's also one of the biggest concerns that we have in our Latino community. We tend to be very social media aware, but we don't know where the information from social media is coming from.
Noticias Montaña covers everything from health and community events to politics and small business in the area. Samantha works with a small team and writes most of the Noticias Montaña articles. Then one of her mentors edits the stories before publishing them online.
What's one thing you wish more people knew about your community?
I think that if I wanted people to know something about the community, it would be three things. First of all, that we're the workforce in the country and that we want to work and we want to build ourselves, we want to help our families, and that we're here for a reason. Second of all, I would like them to know that we share many things in common, because at the end of the day, we're all humans and everything we do it with a purpose. And last but not least, that we love this country. We love the United States. Everything we do it for the prosperity of the country, for the prosperity of our families, and we do it for love.
Samantha's currently studying abroad in South Africa, but the paper won't stop.
Noticias Montaña will keep working and will keep trying to make sure that our community, the Latino community and the Spanish-speaking community, is getting the best information available to them.
And in addition to the newspaper, Samantha also started a union for for Latino students in her high school.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.